You have nothing to say. You are a one-hived mind twat waffle.
Hey, remember Geeks and Gamers, the conservative media grifter channel? I hadn't thought about the channel much since they embarrassed themselves with Zack Snyder. They were championing his DCEU and were excited to have Snyder on a stream to promote his director's cut of Justice League. Snyder's brief appearance on the stream, however, had him disassociating with Geeks and Gamers for a charity and condemning hate crimes against Asian Americans.
Just a quick thing before we get started. I know that on our donation page, we still have the Geeks and Gamers logo. I just want to say that I really, we talked about this, and we're really not affiliated with Geeks and Gamers as far as I'm concerned, and I really just want to make that clear. And I also want to just say, in light of recent events, I think we really, if Justice League teaches us anything, it's about coming together, and there's no room for hate. And I just think that it's important. It's an important message. And of course, as the father of Asian children, it really hits close to home for me. And I just really want to put that out there that we all, there's no room for hate. And that's just what it's about.
Rather than reflect on why Zach didn't want to cater to this group of dorks, the collective instead turned on him.
I talked about it with Zack Snyder. The man, you listen to the man talk and you feel dumber after you hear him talk.
I decided to check out what Geeks and Gamers were up to, and it wasn't much. It's just more of the same. Clickbait titles complaining about mainstream media franchises, thumbnails with reactions and memes they haven't changed in years, bigoted takes, and tired cries of wokeness. It's all just the garden variety grifting nonsense that most of the gullible viewers have moved on from, considering the dwindling views on the channel. Now, I was about to abandon an essay on them until I noticed their partnership with a website called Criticless. And so I looked into this website, and it's fascinating, but not the good kind of fascinating. Criticless was founded as a movie and TV review website to be an alternative to Rotten Tomatoes. Taken at face value, the idea has a functional foundation. Rotten Tomatoes is considered a gold standard for marketing critical praise of film and television. They've been used as shorthand to better sell a movie with a mere high percentage number cited or an iconic certified fresh badge. But the website has many problems. The interface has been retooled several times, making it harder than ever to use. Finding the reviews with quotes from critics and links to their full articles is challenging. You have to scroll down a bit, find the critic tab, and you're only given a handful of quotes before clicking on the critic's review page for that title. It didn't used to be this much of a hunt to find the reviews, considering that was what most people use the site for. There's also the concerning issue of how they treat embargo dates. A controversy had brewed over Rotten Tomatoes, waiting a day after the embargo to tally critic reviews for 2017's Justice League. Some might go so far as to say that this move was intentional by Warner Brothers, the co-owner of Rotten Tomatoes, to move the reviews further towards the release date before it was too late for ticket pre-orders to be canceled. However, it's not that conspiratorial. Rotten Tomatoes just held back the score because they wanted to reveal it on their web show that nobody watched for anything other than the big reveal of the tomato meter. So while not that scandalous, it was dumb. There are also matters on how the Rotten Tomatoes score ranks the debatable 2.5-star reviews as rotten or fresh, the requirements to be accepted as a tallied critic, and the interface just generally being a mess. So there are a lot of issues with Rotten Tomatoes that a competing site would be welcomed. But let's be blunt here, this is not what is desired from those calling for a Rotten Tomatoes alternative. The common complaint about Rotten Tomatoes is that the critics are biased and don't give agreeable ratings that are in touch with common moviegoers. This grudge reveals just how little most people understand how Rotten Tomatoes works. The critics don't work for Rotten Tomatoes. They publish their reviews on their own publications, and then Rotten Tomatoes picks up those reviews. So really, the beef isn't so much with Rotten Tomatoes as it is with the critics popular enough to warrant coverage on the website. But I guess Rotten Tomatoes just acts as shorthand for published critics, despite the confusion in the association. At any rate, Criticless markets itself as a Rotten Tomatoes alternative, even though there are already plenty of alternative movie rating sites like Metacritic and Letterboxd. In fact, Criticless shares more in common with Letterboxd than Rotten Tomatoes, given that it's more of a user-driven review site rather than a critic aggregator of off-site reviews. So Criticless has competition both from Rotten Tomatoes in its target and Letterboxd in its overall function. And how does it fare against its steep competition? Well, you'll see. The website's theme is this 1980s neon throwback style. The homepage background looks like a vaporwave-inspired nightmare for placing all this retro paraphernalia around a room that, based on the tiled walls and ceilings, was previously a bathroom or pool locker room. Below the sign-up options is the tagline, "Entertainment reviewing for the people, by the people," ensuring the users that those stuffy critics who are being paid off by studios are not on this website. Immediately following that phrase, however, are links to their merchandise. So before you start sifting through reviews, be sure to shop through the Criticless store filled with garish t-shirts, hats, and stickers that just scream generic streamer branding. Oh, and you can also purchase a premium membership on Criticless, allowing you to embed YouTube videos in your reviews. Now, even though the store seems to be on a separate build from the main website, given the different URL and lack of a fave icon, the store is actually the only place I could find a mission statement for Criticless. From the store's About Us section, quote, "Criticless derived from the increasingly obvious realization that culture was eroding around us at an extremely rapid rate. Citation needed. Culture should stem from the people through our art and entertainment, not corporate interests and politics. The first logical solution to this issue was a platform to discuss the things we are consuming in a more flexible format with the freedom to hold any opinion, no matter how unpopular. Our merch is just an extension of this concept, showcasing art by independent artists while breathing life into what it means to be a brand. That art includes a t-shirt stressing that repetition is mind control, evoking a mishmash of authoritarian dread pulled from dystopian touches of They Live, 1984, and THX. But what's most concerning about this shirt is the title at the bottom, which reads, "If you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes truth," with truth crossed out and replaced with politics? What? Okay, so the word replacement is confusing enough, but you might be wondering where exactly that quote comes from. Well, if you know your history, you'll likely recall that this quote is attributed to Nazi propaganda chief Joseph Goebbels. Now, it's greatly disputed whether or not Joseph actually said these words, but the general description of this quote refers to the big lie, something Adolf Hitler wrote about in his book Mein Kampf. And it was pretty clear from how Hitler wrote about this topic that he was referring to the Jews being the one who spread the big lie to discredit Germany. Now, if you've already bought this shirt, you'd probably say that you didn't notice the quote similarities. Or you could just argue that the shirt isn't word for word quoting the saying, as the original quote is, "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it." You might even argue that there's no definitive proof that Joseph Goebbels said that quote. But if an explanation of your shirt involves trying to disprove that you agree with a Nazi propaganda line, maybe don't wear a shirt with a quote commonly attributed to Nazi propaganda. It's just going to make you look bad, aside from the confusing use of the word politics and the design just looking hideous. Okay, we're getting a little sidetracked here, so let's go back to the homepage and just look at the reviews as a guest. Sorry, they had to cross that out and replace guest with nerd? What is with these word choices? After clicking that nerd button, you're taken to the general review feed and assigned a default avatar image of a neon Guy Fawkes mask. Cool, very cool, not cringe in the least. Much like Letterboxd, you can search through different movies and TV shows along with the reviews attributed to them. Every movie or TV page allows you to review in a few ways. There's the traditional route of writing a review and then giving it a percentage score, which is collected for the average score. The percentage also determines which word gets tagged with your score, like heinous, bogus, rad, and most excellent. Embarrassing, but, points for sticking to the dated 80s theme. There's also a section for rating the film's themes, which include language, violence, and sex. And you might have already thought of another website that does this, Common Sense Media, a movie ranking website for families to decide if a film is family friendly. A key difference, though, is that Common Sense Media will allow users to recommend the best age group for which that media is appropriate. Criticless also has an option for determining if the film is family friendly, but it's only in a section labeled family friendly with a gauge that runs from no to maybe to 100%? So not very helpful when compared to the competition here. However, my favorite among all these ranking themes is political bias. This is where users can determine if a film is either very left, slightly right, very right, or none. Given that I can't think of any movie review sites with this ridiculous metric, this is definitely a highlight of Criticless. And given the audience that would be attracted to a divergent media review site such as this, you can probably speculate how ridiculous this shit is about to get.
Fucking pronouns!
So now that Criticless had fully piqued my interest, I decided to poke around different films to observe how political bias was being rated. So let's choose an old culture war favorite, Captain Marvel. Now, if you actually paid attention to the film and how it was marketed, you might have noticed the overt military propaganda coursing through this film. The hero Carol Danvers is showcased in several scenes as a pilot for the US Air Force, a military division that assisted in the filming of several scenes at Edwards Air Force Base. The trailer for the film would debut at the National Air and Space Museum with Washington Airmen present, and the film's premiere boasted a flyover from the United States Air Force Thunderbirds. I bring all this up because to work with the Department of Defense and use their bases and assets for filming, you need to run the script by them first. The script needs to showcase the DoD in a light they find positive enough, and if it doesn't meet their standards, they can demand rewrites. Failing to have a script approved by the DoD not only means a loss of filming locations and assets, but also extra incentives for movie budgets and marketing. And given how much Air Force support this Marvel movie received in the lead up to its premiere, it's safe to say that Captain Marvel played ball with whatever the military wanted and ensured the film wouldn't be critical or insulting towards the US Air Force. With all of this in mind, and based on how the film plays out, I would likely rank it somewhere between centrist and liberal. As for Criticless, they rank the film as very left? Why?
Fucking current day Californian shit!
Oh, yeah, right. Sorry, I forgot the crowd we're dealing with here. Clicking on the political bias theme thankfully reveals why a film was ranked as such by the users. And it's not surprising that Captain Marvel is considered too left for this type of audience. And I mean, the complaints here. The film had too much DEI, too much female empowerment, too many bad men, and even a racist cry of the film being too pro-immigration. All that stuff just makes the movie too woke, I guess. So, yeah, the political bias ranking on Criticless plays more like an embarrassing wokeness meter. It's led to such ridiculous declarations of Disney's Snow White remake being very left with political bias. Oh yeah, because if there's one thing leftists love, it's a reinforcement of monarchies. Okay, so let's take a look at a film that's actually leftist. Sorry to bother you. The film's story is about a black telemarketer who soars up the corporate ladder with his white voice, placing a distance between him and those advocating against corporate oppression. Boots Riley directed this film as a very unambiguous anti-capitalist satire. The film was rated very left on Criticless, but there's strangely no reasoning given. But then I looked into the reviews and found one of the very left ratings was from somebody claiming the film was racist. They probably felt this way because part of the plot involves black characters using their white voice to earn promotions, which is satirically played up as an entirely different voice delivered by a white actor. I'm guessing the reviewer thinks the film is racist towards white people? I can only assume because they don't go much further than that. They don't even rate any of the other themes. They just said it's very racist and very left. I mean, I'd rate it very left as well, but mainly for the film being more fervent anti-capitalist and with satire centered around racism and slavery. The most baffling film for identifying political bias is They Live. The John Carpenter classic film about a homeless man discovering an alien conspiracy via sunglasses was a pretty damning indictment of the era of Ronald Reagan and how the upper class was favored while the poor and defenseless were swept under the rug. So, it's a satire of Reaganomics. And you don't need special glasses to see the messaging either. At one point, the protagonist views a politician as an evil alien who spouts the phrase, "It's morning in America," the slogan for the Reagan campaign. It's the 1980s equivalent of a villain spouting the line, "Make America Great Again." The lead actor of Roddy Piper even understood the satire of the Reagan era, and that guy loved Reagan as a president. The problem with They Live is that many who watch it now often don't attribute it to the Reagan era, as his slogan fell away. So instead of recognizing the film's secret aliens as the manipulative ruling class funded by a Republican government, some idiots online have attributed these aliens to symbolizing the Jews. The anti-Semites spread this gross idea that They Live was about the Jews controlling everything. This notion was so horrendous that Carpenter himself spoke up in 2017, spelling out that the film was clearly about yuppies and capitalism, not the Jews. So now let's observe the absolute mess of perspectives from today's alternative critics about They Live's political leanings. Bulldog said there was no political bias and that you could apply any interpretation you wanted as though the film were a tabula rasa. It's not. Chalk Demon said the film was slightly right because it's Alex Jones oriented. Your brain is broken and you need to leave the internet immediately. The Gourd King gets it though, as he declares the film slightly left and makes the obvious point about the film condemning Reaganomics. Ultraca denied any political bias, pretending that the film skewers the left and the right as equal satire. It's not. Experiment 626 said there was no political bias and declared, quote, "Not really left or right, more about people opening their eyes and actually seeing what is happening." And what was happening back then? What specifically in 1988 did Carpenter want people to wake up about? OMB Reviews said there was no political bias and that the film was more philosophical than political. And what philosophy would that be in a 1988 film highlighting wealth disparity? And Salty Nerd said there was no political bias and wrote that it depends on who you ask. Okay, so I guess we won't ask you. It is shocking just how much disconnect there is here. Like, sure, a few reviews are very astute in understanding the messaging of They Live. However, some other folks just seem to say that the film isn't really saying anything political because I guess they're just too dumb to read satire. Okay, so based on these reactions, I think I understand what most of these users consider leftist or centrist in movies. But what do they consider right-wing? Well, let's take a look at films that could be identified as right-wing and watch how they fumble. Red Dawn seems like an easy one. It was directed and co-written by John Milius, a self-described right-wing extremist. Milius wrote the film after receiving guidance from General Alexander Haig of the Hudson Institute, a conservative think tank. The film centers around a ragtag group of small-town Colorado teenagers who are forced to fight back when the Soviets invade America. The Soviets are also allies with the Cubans and Nicaraguans, as if to imply that the US really should strike back against Cuba or fund the Contras trying to dismantle the socialist Sandinistas who attained power in Nicaragua. The teenagers fight for America as the invading Soviets slaughter and imprison Americans. It's a very jingoist, nationalist, and isolationist film about fighting communism. The right wing loves Red Dawn, considering that it ranked at number 15 on the list of the best conservative movies from the conservative magazine National Review. And yet, on Criticless, it only comes up as slightly right. When I looked through the reasoning for those who gave the ratings of slightly right, I came across this quote from Hayden Wayne 75. Quote, "It's a patriotic movie. Somehow in modern day that has become a right-wing viewpoint." Yes, somehow in the modern day the film is considered right-wing and not because it was, made by a guy who literally calls himself a right-wing extremist. Granted, this is a very small sample size, but it does say something about the limited user base and how they interpret a right-wing film. This might explain why The Birth of a Nation, one of the most racist films ever made, embracing the Ku Klux Klan, only received the rating of slightly right. Yes, the film where the far-right hate group are the heroes is only slightly right. Mogwai Movie Reviews wrote, "I've never been able to get through the whole thing in one sitting, even at double speed. The blackface parts are shameful and painfully hard to watch today, though I suppose the argument in response would be there simply weren't any black actors available in 1915 to perform the more theatrical parts." Wait, you suppose that's the argument? That there weren't enough black actors? Way to spit on the legacy of Burt Williams and Sam Lucas. Also, don't you think there might be another reason why black actors wouldn't want to be in this movie? Do you think it might have something to do with the subject matter involving the Ku Klux Klan? Anyway, he continues, "It goes on forever, bogged down with people reading letters over and over again, or carrying trivialities that have no bearing on the plot, and the black people are just cartoonish in their villainy. Still, less racist than a Spike Lee joint, though." Less racist than a Spike Lee joint? Imagine saying something like that. Imagine being so unbelievably stupid that you had the ignorant confidence to say that The Birth of a Nation, regarded as one of the most racist films ever made, is somehow less racist than a Spike Lee movie. Okay, come on. There's got to be one very right movie on this website. I mean, how about Daily Wire's Lady Ballers? Okay, at least with this film, its political bias is ranked at very right. But just barely. Hey look, it's Jeremy of Geeks and Gamers. Here are all his reviews, even though many of them just seem to be links to his YouTube reviews. Oh, he definitely rated the Snow White remake as very left. Let's take a look. Wait a minute. Hang on, he didn't give a political rating. He didn't rate any of the themes. In fact, none of the reviews I found from him contribute to any of the themes for political bias, language, or being family friendly. Does Jeremy not know how to use this function? Or does he just refuse to? Like, come on, dude, your organization is supposed to have some big partnership with Criticless. Shouldn't you be doing more than just reposting your YouTube reviews on it? Criticless just seems like a very barren and sad website, a place where critical thought on film goes to die. Now, I'm sure some would defend this website as more of an objective aggregator. After all, the political bias and ratings are determined more by the users and not the creators. It's not like those working on this website have some political bias of their own that they're trying to push. They're just leaving it up to the people for them to decide whether or not a movie is woke without trying to influence the needle one way or the other. Let me burn that argument down to the ground by referencing their official YouTube page, Criticless Cast, primarily hosted by Blaine Andrews, the CEO and founder of Criticless. And it is about as embarrassing as I expected. For starters, just take a look at their bio. Criticless Cast is the world's most excellent entertainment commentary, movie reviewing, and professional critic roasting channel. Critic is misspelled. I don't know how this happened. Your website literally has the word critic in the title. How did this happen? Join the unhinged crew on a journey of free thought as they develop a refreshing film criticism counterculture where it's okay to disagree with out-of-touch film critics. The divide between critics and general audiences grows wider every day, and it's time someone put it under a microscope. Are critics too politically driven, too close to the industry, or just too disconnected to relate? Maybe it's all of the above and then some, and we are determined to find out. Get controversial and dissect tomato scores while uplifting our Criticless users week to week. Join the host and Criticless CEO Blaine Andrews and fellow movie lovers Matt Verlock, Chris Cowless, and assorted miscreants as they hypocritically review the latest in film and TV while attempting to predict, discuss, and critique the overall critical response. Now, before I show you what videos are on the channel, let's look at its top competitor of Letterboxd. On the Letterboxd YouTube page, they have videos with celebrities where they're asked about their favorite films and read off Letterboxd reviews of their own films. These are some fun videos that do a great job highlighting the website's appeal. Now, Criticless is a younger site, and it's probably not going to attract notable celebrities from the start. But hey, you can still make videos promoting what makes the website fun. I mean, you could mention the highest rated horror films come Halloween, or mention the top films that were ranked from last month. But Criticless doesn't have those types of videos. Based on the videos I watched, they're essentially trying to draw a crowd by adopting the reactionary conservative tactics. And based on their views and subscribers, it doesn't look like it's paying off that well. Okay, I'll get into these videos, but before we go any further, we need to establish the term propaganda because it will come up a lot. Propaganda, as defined by Oxford, is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a particular cause, doctrine, or point of view. That definition covers a broad range of views and can be applied to lies or truthful information. Even though most people seem to use the word propaganda referring more to, promoting the state, it can extend beyond that and need not be funded by the state to endorse it. However, the most important aspect of recognizing propaganda is what it tries to promote and its effectiveness at pushing that worldview. Let us now look at his most popular video, One Battle After Another is Top Shelf Propaganda? What type of propaganda? Well, you can probably guess based on the Criticless political bias score, but well, you'll see.
I've had my fair share of controversial opinions over the years, but I can guarantee you that this will rank highly among my most controversial.
Okay, I have a pet peeve with certain YouTubers when they always preface their opinion with this line. Like, oh no, brace yourself everybody, I'm about to say something controversial about a movie. It just feels performatively provocative for something that I'm sure is going to be dumb, but nothing all that scandalous.
I have no doubt that this film will go down as one of the most overrated films of the year, but I'm not even trying to exaggerate here. This might be one of the most overrated films of all time.
It sure sounds like he's exaggerating because he made this video one day after it hit theaters.
And everything boils down to a few simple things. Firstly, how easily are you propagandized?
Propagandized to what?
Second, was this your type of propaganda?
Was this your type of propaganda? Do people really have this preference in mind regarding the propaganda they favor? But also, you still haven't stressed what kind of propaganda this is. Is this the same deal with conservative grifters where they use this confusing shorthand where politics just means left-leaning politics to them? It is, isn't it? Okay, let me get my bingo card here.
Or lastly, are you confident enough to admit that this is propaganda when all of the institutional hack critics look you directly in your eyes and tell you that this is one of the greatest films ever made?
These three questions, mind you, are loaded for a conservative audience who already believes movies are wokeness propaganda perpetuated by critics. Are you easily propagandized?
Hell no, I'm a free-thinking man who won't be indoctrinated by leftist Hollywood.
Was this your type of propaganda?
Hell no, I don't like propaganda from any political side, even though I only believe it's coming from liberals.
Are you confident enough to admit that this is propaganda based on what critics say?
Hell yes I am. I'm a free-thinking man who doesn't listen to what any critic says, and if they like a film, it must be indoctrination.
One Battle is directed by the critically praised filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson, the guy behind There Will Be Blood, Boogie Nights, and Punch Drunk Love. He's the sort of dude pretentious film buffs will reference and your average moviegoer will know very little about.
Wow, really showing your ass here with a statement like that. You really think the average moviegoer doesn't know about movies like Boogie Nights, Punch Drunk Love, or There Will Be Blood? These weren't little films that hardly anybody watched. I mean, they had huge stars attached, they were nominated for numerous awards, and a lot of people refer back to these films for the extraordinary performances. There Will Be Blood used to be more famous online for the quotable lines of Daniel Day-Lewis. Even people who have never seen the film know about his milkshake monologue through mere cultural osmosis.
I drink your milkshake.
I drink your milkshake.
His new film follows a borderline slapstick domestic terrorist played by Leonardo DiCaprio and his absolutely obnoxious and horny, even worse domestic terrorist girlfriend played by Tiana Taylor.
Okay, some context is missing here from the characters of Bob and Perfidia. Both of the characters are framed as high-spirited revolutionaries fighting back against the unjust capitalist system and immigration camps. They're also meant to be framed as failures. When the heat gets too heavy, they run away. Perfidia takes a plea deal before disappearing, and Bob lays low with his daughter while becoming lazier in his activism, where the most rebellious thing that he can do is smoke weed while watching the Battle of Algiers. Both of them, however, do instill hope in their teenage daughter Willa, played by Chase Infinity. Despite Bob being a mess, he still raises a politically astute daughter, and despite Perfidia not being present, her left-behind note inspires her to keep fighting. They're not meant to be perfect heroes, but they are believable for being framed as a generation that failed and is trying to give the next generation hope.
They are accompanied by a fully erect Sean Penn. Yes, you heard that right. Giving the dumbest performance of his life, and a slew of assorted, recognizable actors with roles ranging from incompetent feds, evil white supremacists, and heroic brown people committing crimes.
Oh, hang on a minute. I had a racist dog whistle on my bingo card here. Okay, so speaking of racism, Sean Penn's Colonel character is meant to be an absurd character. He's a racist and sexual creep who really wants to join a white supremacist club. You're meant to laugh at this guy, considering his name is Lockjaw, and the white supremacist group he wants to join is called the Christmas Adventure Club. Now you can say that none of that is funny. I mean, comedy is subjective, but getting all offended that Sean Penn was giving a dumb performance when he was clearly called upon to play a dumb character is a weak criticism. Imagine getting mad at Jim Carrey for being too dumb in the movie Dumb and Dumber.
If all of this sounds oddly familiar, well, yeah, it's because you've seen this 100,000 times before. This is more of the same far-left pandering we've been getting from Hollywood for years.
Yeah, citation needed here. Eddington, an Ari Aster film that came out this year, is the only footage he uses to prove this point. If we really have been getting far-left propaganda in movies for years, it would help if you highlighted a film that, wasn't just from this year, maybe of like the year prior at least.
There's just one caveat here. It's wrapped in competent filmmaking that's undercut with a very busy story and an odd comedy element that works together to disarm the viewer. This all allows those who enjoy this drivel to excuse their propaganda and gaslight you, the viewer, into thinking it's some sort of balanced, intelligent commentary.
So Paul Thomas Anderson made a good-looking film with just the right tonal shifts and pacing to be entertaining. But also, that's bad because the movie's messaging is propaganda. And if you enjoyed the film, you were gaslit into doing so? Like, did you think this one battle after another was an exciting movie with reflective elements of our era? No, Hollywood just deceived you, so saith Criticless cast.
Don't fall for it. One battle is definitely not as clever as it thinks it is, and I'm pretty sure there's an argument to be made that it has a high risk of further radicalizing real-world versions of those domestic terrorists that I mentioned, which the film not only sympathizes with, but it encourages.
I would argue the film doesn't really encourage them. Like, sure, Bob and Perfidia have accomplished plenty of bank bombings and immigration camp rescues, but they have failed to dismantle these institutions fully. The dangers of such a lifestyle are stressed, and how easy it is to crumble when more oppressive forces are always right behind you. But if your concern is that you think a movie like this is going to inspire people to blow up banks and free detained immigrants from camps, maybe you should read The Room.
If I were to break this movie down quickly, it would be as follows. A crew of glorified Antifa members are followed through the years as they are hunted down by the world's most cartoonishly evil, moronic, white supremacist ICE agent as he wields the entire power of the federal government with zero oversight to hunt down and capture them because he's madly obsessed with a black chick who contradicts everything he stands for because of some kind of weird kink reason. Yeah, you heard that right. The real crux of this film is about an ICE dude who has a weird kink.
Oh wow, a government figure in a position of authority with little oversight and a closeted fetish that contradicts what he stands for. Yeah, that's not believable at all. I can't think of a single instance of that happening. That's just cartoonish. And if you think there are people in power like this, then please try to just name 50 of them. You can't, can you? Total fantasy, this film.
Hopefully you made it this far without me ticking you off. And if I have angered you, then just hang with me for a bit here, because I feel like I need to clarify a few things.
Oh, hang on, let me get my bingo card here, because I'm pretty sure he's going to make the argument that he doesn't like propaganda from any side.
I have zero interest in having propaganda rammed down my throat from either side of the political spectrum. I would be pointing this out if the roles were reversed and it was coming from the far right. If this was some sort of hyper-fantasized vigilante film about some sort of militarized guy hunting down migrants and illegal immigrants, I would be making a video very similar, complaining about the same type of things, just from the other side of the aisle.
Okay, check. Come on, let's see, balanced political mockery.
If you were going to get political, then give it to me straight. I want the whole picture. I want it from all sides of the argument with nuance and proper context, or don't bother. I get that there was the comedy mixed in, but that's manipulative. And if you're going to do all that, then you still need to be balanced with it.
All right, balanced political mockery. Got that one.
Now, let's go ahead and talk about how this movie could radicalize folks. Literally just days ago, we had a politically radicalized communist open fire with the intent to kill ICE agents, only to accidentally kill an illegal immigrant and injure 2 others before taking his own life. These sort of revolutionaries and activists are the exact focal point of who this film wants you to sympathize with, root for, and relate to. All in a time when tensions have never been higher on this specific issue, and it is clear that many mentally ill people seem to be more activated than ever, making the deceptive, glowing assessments of this film from the critic community and those assessing it seem extremely reckless.
Everything goes wrong for Perfidia the moment that she first kills a security guard. Up to that point, we only see her movement, restraining ICE agents and not killing them. The revolutionaries are armed and they do blow stuff up, but we never see them kill. The film firmly establishes that murdering in the name of revolution can complicate it. The scenes following the murder are not triumphant, they're horrifying and intense. Considering the murder is what makes the entire movement crumble, I don't think the film argues that assassination is a good thing when trying to lead a political revolution. So no, the film isn't going to inspire an assassination. You're just bad at reading the movie.
One battle is excellently filmed with decent pacing, even though it is just shy of 3 freaking hours long. It has a score that keeps the frantic vibe of the movie chugging along. We also get solid performances out of everyone, even if I did absolutely hate several of its morally bankrupt characters. Granted, I can't personally say there were any true standouts outside of the young woman playing DiCaprio's daughter. The acting was just fine. We've seen better from most of these people. But honestly, I would expect no less than all of this from a prestige filmmaker like Paul Thomas Anderson. There is going to be a level of quality.
Who is this Paul Thomas Anderson? Please explain, Blaine, for I am but an average moviegoer who has never heard of this prestigious director. Or are you just one of those obnoxious cinephiles who likes to reference his work?
Let's get to the very obvious, wildly ignored flaws. There's some really terrible writing here, and this issue stretches across all facets of the script. There's unbelievable and unrealistic behaviors from almost every single character, conveniences and contrivances galore to help simply push the story along.
Like what? What was a contrivance? What was an unbelievable character motivation? I swear, I'm not editing him out of context here. He just drops these criticisms without citing any examples.
Clearly manipulative depictions of specific character types made to emotionally manipulate the viewer, like painting all military and wealthy as complete idiots and making illegal immigrants and career criminals seem like poor victims.
Maybe the film frames the characters this way because it's relatable. Because I don't know how much money you make annually, Blaine, but most people are not rich. And the people who are rich spend their money on very stupid things and make very stupid decisions. It's also very telling that you think the illegal immigrants in this film that are framed as innocent is a manipulative tactic, considering how little we know about them. The only one we get any depth on is potentially Benicio del Toro's character of Sergio, and Sergio seems pretty chill. He's in touch with his community, helps out poor immigrants with housing and hiding, and even supports a burnt-out rebel like Bob. There's no reason given to assume the many detained immigrants or the families in hiding were criminals. Unless, of course, you're racist. We are a little over halfway through his video, and how do you think he's doing so far? Do you think he might be swinging in the direction of a particular political bias?
Heroic brown people committing crimes.
Okay, let's keep going and see if I can get a bingo. I'm looking for "we're all so divided these days," so let's see that happen.
All of this is not to mention the pathetic attempts at humor, which garnered maybe one laugh out of me over its painfully long runtime, like Sean Penn walking around with a boner in a humiliation ritual, or having DiCaprio flounder around like he was one of the Three Stooges. The tonal whiplash truly does undercut the seriousness of the real-world implications of the film, especially with our current political climate. It simply comes across as tone-deaf.
Is it tone-deaf? Because the humor provides a bit of catharsis for the moment that we're living in. That levity helps balance out the tense era of right-wing authoritarianism that is gripping our nation and makes the characters more human. Their flaws are not just there so that we can laugh at them. I mean, it's present to make a point clear about their motivations. Revolutionaries like Bob might have a desire to change the world, but that spirit can dampen over time as concerns shift and desperation sets in. Right-wing dorks like Lockjaw hold a lot of power to operate without much political pushback, but they are also insecure losers with pathetic ambitions that ultimately lead to them being eaten by their own, as fascists tend to do. Also, it's sometimes just fun to have that kind of satire in a dire situation. Do you think Dr. Strangelove is an inappropriate film for its jokes about annihilation via nukes during a time when that was a concern?
In short, all of this leads me to believe that one battle's outlandishly high praise from the critics is more manipulation than a genuine assessment of the film. This is, as I mentioned before, their type of propaganda, and they are going to compromise their typically high expectations in favor of trying to convince the idiot masses to consume more of their trash in hopes of keeping the movement alive, especially as support is dwindling for this sort of messaging outside of the extreme fringes and Hollywood elites.
Right, because if there's one thing the average American loves more than anything right now, it's ICE rolling into their cities. All the people who despise ICE, yeah, that's only the extreme fringes and the Hollywood elites. It's not like communities are rallying together to stop ICE. They just let them stroll on in and take out the bad immigrants without any issue. Yeah, that's a reality and not a complete fantasy you fabricated for yourself.
I have only seen 2 critics out of hundreds to be honest about the divisive nature of the film on Rotten Tomatoes. Among all the institutional shills on that platform, only one man dared to name this movie as what it truly is: irresponsible.
Hey, let's go find the reviews to get some context, which Blaine does not provide. Okay, so I found way more than 2 negative reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, that does tend to happen. More reviews can pop up after opening weekend and change the score. So let's go through them. Dwight Brown found the film a little detached from its satirical bite and not as funny as it aimed to be, but still appreciated the filmmaking and rated it at 2.5 out of 5. Katie Mahay from For Your Reference podcast found that the film seemed to dilute the ultimate message of signaling a revolution. Still, she gave it 2.5 out of 5. David Nasser of Real Film Reviews also felt the film was a bit of a misfire from an accomplished director, rating it at 2 out of 4. Michael Nordine of Movie Brief found the film entertaining, but also a little forgettable in its staying power despite loving PTA's work. Susan Granger of SSG Syndicate seems to fall more in the camp of despising all the characters. Still, she only rated the film at 5 out of 10. Odie Henderson of the Boston Globe found the film to be more of a crowd pleaser than a provocative film about revolution. Nick Johnson of Vanyaland felt the film was more of a lacking imitation of Thomas Pynchon's writing. Brooke Obie of Black Girl Watching actually has the most interesting negative review for highlighting how Anderson depicts black women in a way that devalues their role in the political movement. Her lengthy article was an interesting read, and it makes some great points about the troubling representation and the tonal tackling of a modern revolution. But then there are reviews from Alan Ing of Film Threat who said the film was terrible, and it couldn't garner a decent box office. One Battle After Another, by the way, is the highest opening for a Paul Thomas Anderson movie in a wide release. I've covered Film Threat before, and they're hardly credible with such terrible views and writing. Don't believe me? Well, here's the opening paragraph of Alan's review. Paul Thomas Anderson returns with One Battle After Another, his most overtly political film of the year. Leonardo DiCaprio and Tiana Taylor play revolutionaries whose violent struggle collides with questions of family, loyalty, and survival. Blah, 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 blah. I didn't add the blahs. He actually wrote that in his review, so just riveting writing over at Film Threat there. There are plenty more negative reviews, but the bulk of them focus on how the film lacks a stern focus of revolution or falters in its representation of battling fascism. And if you really want just dogshit takes from people who think the film is disgusting Antifa propaganda, that's present there too. It's almost like Rotten Tomatoes is not a monolith of critics who all think the same. I mean, they're not, but hey, Criticless has built their entire website around this idea. So I guess they're stuck just making up bullshit forever.
I hope that if you were curious about this film and were planning to go see it, that I've given you a more clear idea of what it actually contains. I've been in far too many scenarios where the critic praise has been extremely high, only to go see something and realize that they were completely lying about everything in the film just to get me to pay for a ticket.
Well, you were certainly lying.
Regardless, at the end of the day, I just want to see less of this type of crap, less of the propaganda and the politically motivated filmmaking. It's time to just get things that can bring people together instead of divide us. This whole the people versus the people thing is getting really old. At the end of the day, those in power will always win if they are able to keep us divided.
Hey, all right, I got a bingo.
When it comes to me and my review on Criticless, I'm probably going to give this movie like a 19% out of 100. Because it is heinous, and I'm probably going to be encouraging people to be hesitant about this movie before they watch it. And to those who enjoyed it, I guess I'm glad you had a good time, but maybe let's try to analyze things a little bit further and realize that there are people trying to put things into our brain to activate us further, and that is the last thing we need right now.
If your argument against people who like this movie is that you feel they're being brainwashed, you kind of have to bring receipts. And you haven't really done that in this video.
But look, even if you think that I am a complete and total idiot and I am wildly off base about this film, I want you to leave your review on Criticless. We want to hear what you think.
Nope, I'm not using your dogshit website to make a point. I already have a platform on YouTube to make my point, where my opinion will be seen far more than on your little circle jerk of Criticless. I know you probably want alternative voices to balance out the wealth of anti-woke dorks that you've accumulated, but you're not selling me. Nice try with the rage bait, though. Now, I brought up propaganda earlier because the best way to combat it is to properly identify what it is communicating and how it is instilling that message. I did this earlier in the video when I spoke of Red Dawn as right-wing propaganda for the political views of the director and the political implications about how the film portrays the Soviets, Cubans, and Nicaraguans as one giant enemy that America needs to defeat. But when making that point, I didn't just say Red Dawn was propaganda. I qualified it with right-wing propaganda. Now, I've covered this lack of a qualifier with conservative grifters before, the way they'll use terms like politics to act as shorthand for leftist politics. So with this in mind, you should be able to read between the lines of this next video. Good fortune, 2025, Keanu's heartfelt laughs, no propaganda. The implication is that there is no leftist propaganda. I'll explain why in the video, but right off the bat, Good Fortune is clearly about wealth inequality. The story involves the angel Gabriel, played by Keanu Reeves, losing his wings after a body-swapping fiasco. He swaps bodies with the struggling freelancer, played by Aziz Ansari, and the wealthy venture capitalist, played by Seth Rogen. Gabriel performs the swap, hoping that Aziz's character will learn that money can't fix your problems. But in a capitalist America, money does fix your problems. Money ensures that he will have a place to live, food to eat, and health care to stay alive. Meanwhile, Seth Rogen's character struggles to make ends meet and resorts to stealing. Gabriel also experiences the hardships of being a human, gaining a better understanding of their problems. Eventually the bodies are swapped back, but only by Aziz's choice and with some reassuring words from Gabriel about facing the unknown. The film is certainly sympathetic to the plight of the gig economy, but also resolves itself too quickly and with the nasty taste of how the only thing that will save us under capitalism will be the good capitalist. So I have mixed feelings about the film. I mean, it's definitely funny, and the casting is great, particularly Reeves' performance as an angel sobered by the human experience. But it also feels like it pulls back at the last minute from exploring its social elements in favor of a happy ending more fantastical than grounded. All that said, the film clearly advocates that life is hard in the gig economy and that those struggling to pay the bills should get a better paycheck. So there's definitely some politics in this movie. So let's see how Blaine approaches the movie Good Fortune. The review starts with a simple plot synopsis and praise for Keanu Reeves, and then he starts talking about his thoughts on the film and how he feels about Seth Rogen.
Let's address the Seth Rogen elephant in the room. Some of you completely check out when his name pops up on a cast list. There's too much crass humor or personal politics. From what I gather, all of these things kind of get in the way. Now, I get it. I was skeptical too, but after his killer role with the studio, I'm gonna give him a pass. He seems to have read the room over the past year or so. I'm really enjoying being able to love Seth again.
Seth read the room? He just took on roles that you liked. I mean, you know that he's still politically active, right? His personal politics are still very vocal. In fact, this year, Rogen went off script at the Science Breakthrough Prize ceremony where he criticized the Trump administration for destroying scientific research and criticized the tech bros who supported him. So no, Seth Rogen did not tone down his politics to ensure that he would get to return for the next Mario Brothers movie. Also, if you don't like seeing Seth Rogen in highly political roles, you're probably not going to want to watch Sausage Party Foodtopia. In the same way that Sausage Party was an unambiguous satire of religion, Foodtopia is very clearly an anti-capitalist satire. Not to mention, Rogen has spent a lot more time executive producing shows like The Boys and Gen V, both shows that are pretty unmistakable satires of American-flavored capitalism and fascism. But hey, you know, whatever you need to tell yourself to still enjoy Pineapple Express.
I mean, Pineapple Express is one of my favorite comedy films of all time, which also might reveal a bit too much about myself.
It's not funny!
Okay, but we're getting off track here. The video said there was no propaganda, or left-leaning propaganda if we're reading between the lines. So let's hear that argument.
It's not just light comedy though. Aziz weaves some surprising philosophical and social commentary without picking sides. There's no politics, no preaching, just a layered story that kind of sneaks up on you.
Okay, not really making a good case here for no politics. I mean, the film seems to be political for commenting on the struggles of the gig economy. Like, come on, dude, can you say anything of substance here?
What makes Good Fortune shine is its message. Now, I know that statement alone in 2025 is terrifying when talking about anything coming out of Hollywood.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I know which audience finds the message terrifying.
So without spoilers, it's all about seeing life from another's perspective. No hate, just empathy. The rich truly seeing the poor realizing that sometimes they need to buckle down and do more.
Wait, I'm sorry, what? The poor need to buckle down and do more? Are you fucking serious? The poor do more work than any wealthy elite or tech bro venture capitalist will ever do in their lifetime. Think of the absolute ignorance and privilege required to say something so incredibly dumb. The driving factors for Aziz's character wanting to go back to his old life seem to be his passions for documentary filmmaking, a relationship with Elena who despises opulence, and a solidarity with the poor to improve their lives on a grassroots level. But no, the poor just need to work harder, while the rich need to treat the workers better. They're the same, you see. It's a balance. You can criticize the rich and the poor equally.
Aziz asks us to lift each other up no matter where we stand. In today's divided world, I think that is a really bold take.
Oh yeah, we need to stop being so divided all the time. But also, in Blaine's eyes, the poor are not working hard enough.
Now, I'll be real. This film got to me. By the end, I was moved, maybe even shed a tear or two, but don't tell anybody. I've actually been told by my daughter that I don't even know how to cry.
Why are you so insecure about crying at a movie? I hate when guys do this shit and they've got to feel embarrassed about their tears. To any guys listening to this video, it's okay to cry at a movie. It's not weird or emasculating. Get your cry on. It's healthy.
It might not be one of these rush to the theater type of movies, but it's noble, and that's really rare. On a Criticless scale, I'm giving Good Fortune a rad, probably somewhere between a 65 and 75%. It's a solid film with a really big heart.
Okay, so I didn't really get an understanding of why you felt this film wasn't left-leaning propaganda. Maybe you felt that way because it didn't feature heroic brown people committing crimes. Maybe you felt that way because it reinforced your worldview that the poor need to work harder. Maybe you felt that way because you could ignore Rogen's personal politics for a moment. Whatever it may be that led you to this conclusion, this is a very vapid movie review that addresses very little. But I guess I should have expected that from a video that's only about 3 minutes long. Okay, so far we've seen Blaine oppose and defend films that have fresh ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. But what about a film that was mostly hated that he likes? Behold his review of The Electric State.
Netflix has a new movie out called The Electric State. It's directed by the Russo brothers who did Infinity War and Endgame along with the Captain America films. And if you were to believe the critic community and the armchair experts of social media, then you would think that this is the worst film ever made. But I'm here to tell you it's really not that bad, and many people are actually saying it's pretty great.
Many people are saying that it's great. Cool. Can't wait to hear from them. So after a standard synopsis of the film about a teenager trying to save her brother, praise of the casting, and the standard call to actions, he finally starts talking about how he feels about the film a minute later. Well, not so much how he feels, but rather how he feels about other people not liking the movie.
It's reaching a point where the groupthink surrounding the negative opinions about The Electric State is downright hilarious. The hyperbolic rhetoric is at a fever pitch. I keep hearing the exact same talking points from literally everyone who dislikes it. How many of them have you seen use the words slop, pandering, or soulless? Or seen them say, if only this was made by Denis Villeneuve or some other similar director? How many of them are screaming about the admittedly too high budget, but can't seem to deny how absolutely stunning the movie looks? Or lastly, about the fact that it doesn't stick to a graphic novel which no one had actually heard of or knew existed until now.
You know, a film can look good and still be terrible. That also might play into the misuse of the budget, which, mind you, the budget wasn't just high, it was absurdly high for a Netflix movie. The budget for The Electric State was $320 million. For reference, that's close to the same budget that the Russos had for Avengers Infinity War. So that's a lot of money to throw at a film that will only debut on Netflix. And honestly, it wasn't worth it. It's just a clunky sci-fi story that rarely has any charm and fails to address anything meaningful about the relationship between humanity and technology. It's a junk film, but I'm curious how Blaine here is going to defend it.
It's as simple as this. They can't put their finger on any solid reasons why exactly they disliked it. They're just mad it exists and they want a good insult. These simple popcorn flicks are easy to hate on for grumpy, jaded types.
Oh yeah, because critics just hate fun, exciting popcorn movies that the general audiences love. Just like the last big blockbuster film by the Russo brothers, Avengers Endgame. After all, that was a film that the vast majority of audiences seemed to love, and the percentage of professional critics who actually gave the film a positive review on Rotten Tomatoes was only 94%. Okay, so that argument that critics don't like fun is kind of idiotic now. Do you want to back up this claim with any evidence?
If they've actually watched it, they'll admittedly know many people are going to find The Electric State very fun, which inherently makes them more angry. Once they hear others launch the aforementioned insults, they think, oh yeah, there it is, that's a good one, and begin to regurgitate the exact same talking points like they're those dipshits we've seen on corporate news channels where they all say the same exact things in unison.
Okay, so we're just going to insult people who didn't like this movie. What proof do you have that critics are angered by general audiences liking this movie? I honestly don't think most critics care what the Netflix audience finds fun, especially since Netflix boasts a lot of safe and bland films built for family movie night. You know, if you want to make a case for a film being good, you kind of have to start with what makes it good instead of just blaming any opposition as just hating fun.
What if a different director had made it? Accusation falls in the same camp with the complaint that it doesn't stick to the source material. The tone and vibe of the graphic novel is very dark, gritty, and bleak. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've had enough of that sort of thing to last a lifetime.
Do you think there might be a point to the source material being bleak? Like, you're showing clips from Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune. Don't you think that film would feel very hollow and uninteresting if it reverted from the novel's darker forebodings about Messiah culture and just made Paul Atreides the hero who is destined to live happily ever after? I'm sorry if you don't like dark stories that favor a greater thematic element than a chipper conclusion, Blaine, but some stories are just better when they lean into the darkness. If you think the original graphic novel is not as emotionally fulfilling with its grimmer storytelling, fine. But it really says something about how dismissive you are of adaptations when it leads to something as artificial and commercial as Netflix's adaptation of The Electric State.
But even if you haven't had your fill of misery, it's not hard to see why they didn't go that route. Did you know that creator and artist Simon Stålenhag had a big budget Amazon show based on his work back in 2020 called Tales from the Loop? The show wasn't bad at all, but it did not have the mass appeal, and few people saw it. The heavy, somber tone and instantly less approachable nature of it made it more divisive. And look, I can almost guarantee you that I've been a fan of Simon's work for long before anyone you knew had ever even heard his name. I love the imagery he creates and have followed him for around 8 years. I know his art can look heavy, but it can also see the potential in there. You can find the joy and wonder in the dystopias that he creates. All of this is not to mention that if this had been closer to what people consider to be Simon's vision, then I can guarantee you this would have been more of the generic far left propaganda we've been getting shoved down our throats from Hollywood for at least the past 15 years.
Was Tales from the Loop more divisive? Because I'm looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score right now, which is sitting at a healthy 87 critic score and a 75% audience score. It sure seems that a lot of people like the adaptation of Tales from the Loop instead of the commercial treatment for the graphic novel The Electric State. It's also pretty funny that you say you're a fan of his work and that you can see the joy in his dystopian setting, and then follow that up by saying a faithful adaptation would be left-wing trash. It sure doesn't seem like you're a fan of his work, Blaine. I've watched Tales from the Loop, and it's genuinely entertaining. It's heartbreaking, beautiful, and it's just great storytelling throughout its 8 episodes. I would much rather watch Tales from the Loop than The Electric State. And the fact that you dismiss any genuine adaptation as far-left propaganda really makes it seem like you don't give a shit about any sci-fi story that isn't chipper and safe. Why do you even like this guy's work if you're okay with it being retooled into slop for Netflix?
The dude's pretty much a commie. Most would consider him woke.
Based on what? I gotta tell you, I really don't believe you're a fan of this guy's work, Blaine.
As with the depressing movies full of commentary, I've had my fill of that sort of thing, so it's a hard pass. I'll enjoy the art, not the artist.
Then maybe you should stop watching sci-fi dystopian films, dude. Or, stop begging for sci-fi dystopian stories to be adventure films that feel artificially family-friendly. The original graphic novel was supposed to be bleak with storytelling and muted with its displays of a tech-ravaged Earth.
I get that they turned this into a family film. It's a bit of an odd move compared to the tone of Simon's art, but it doesn't mean it can't be done, or shouldn't be done.
If you reduce a meaningful message about the decay of technology that leads to civil war into a safe family film, you're sanding off a lot of the edges. I made a joke years ago about how dumb it would be to turn Dune into an animated series for kids. And you're essentially arguing, no, we should be taking these dour, cautionary sci-fi tales and dilute them so much that they say nothing and become mindless popcorn entertainment for family movie night.
This was an extremely refreshing change of pace that allowed my kids to see something that's cool and sci-fi for a change.
Next Gen, The Mitchells vs. the Machines, Over the Moon, The Wild Robot. All of those films are on Netflix and are far better sci-fi films for families than the trash that is The Electric State.
Lastly, in regard to the crazy high $300,000 plus budget, I'm not too sure why it was quite that high, but it was cheaper to make than Avengers Endgame or Avatar 2. This movie had nearly as much star power as those movies, and the visual effects on screen were better than 99% of the things that come out. The robots look freaking real. They are an actual tangible thing in this world. It had a similar feel to how the Na'vi in Avatar 2 as well, but it just didn't look as lame.
The difference is that more people went to see Avengers Endgame and Avatar 2, and categorically, more people enjoyed both films more than The Electric State. Like, damn, dude, even the audience score for Avatar 2 is way higher than the critic score. So I think you're in the minority on this point, which means you kind of have to back up your points here if you're trying to make a case beyond you just thinking that the robots look cool in this Netflix movie that comes close to the budget of a major blockbuster.
But yes, I get it. They could have made 100 bland art house films that nobody gives a crap about for the exact same price.
Poor Things is a fantastic film. Fuck you for using that as B-roll.
I've been listening to endless people scream things like, "We want original stories. Can't you simply entertain us or just make movies good again?" Yet here we are with each complaint addressed, and yet the exact same people are complaining.
But it's not an original film. It's based on a graphic novel, which you just admitted to. And it's not all that entertaining either, unless all you want is a mindless mash of special effects placed on top of a generic sci-fi adventure.
I would argue that in scenarios like this, sometimes good is not only just enough, but it's even great. While The Electric State isn't a flawless masterpiece, it's collectively so good and feels so original that the experience itself is great.
So you've settled for crap. A hokey sci-fi adventure with a diluted story and a lot of special effects is enough for you to lower the bar.
It does what so many of us have been begging for, and that's to be entertained.
I can name at least 50 films from this year that have entertained me way more than The Electric State.
I have always been the guy to rail endlessly against the negativity of the critic sphere. I mean, it's the entire reason that I created a social entertainment reviewing platform called Criticless. Critics tend to be a pretentious lot. They're also regularly guilty of the groupthink, which I mentioned before. They develop opinions off of others' thoughts or just from watching the trailers, and then before they even try out the product, they've made up their mind.
Oh yeah, Criticless is much different from those influenced critics, which is why they partnered with Geeks and Gamers. They're not about groupthink, even though all of Blaine's talking points seem to align with Geeks and Gamers.
These same individuals who pride themselves on being intellectuals or boast about having more refined palate regularly claim to enjoy some of the most mindless, uninteresting, and utterly offensive dog shit imaginable.
Yeah, I'm gonna need some citation on that, champ. Because it sure does seem like you're trying to promote anti-intellectualism here to run defense for a dogshit Netflix film.
The type of thing that feels like you should just go to sleep to, or it just makes you want to jump off the nearest cliff. Just because something ticks every technical box does not make it enjoyable.
The B-roll he's using to make this point about critics celebrating boring movies is Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, a highly revered spy thriller from director Thomas Alvarezson and a magnificent performance by Gary Oldman. It's a brilliant film with some tense and thrilling scenes on the nature of espionage. Like, forget Rotten Tomatoes, where most critics love the movie. Even if I go to the Criticless website, most of your users rated that film at the highest level. And look, obviously, your perspective on films is subjective, but if you were trying to prove that critics like pretentious and meandering films, I think you chose a terrible example.
These folks will add insult to injury by having the gall to shame people for simply having a good time. Everything doesn't have to be aimed at making a grand statement or require every piece to click perfectly into place, especially when it's aimed at a larger audience, and even more so when family films are involved.
Which critics are getting mad at you for liking a shitty film on Netflix? Because all of this just sounds like manufactured outrage at nothing because you didn't like the Rotten Tomatoes score.
This sort of obsessive yammering about logic, continuity, structure, scientific accuracy, adherence to realism, or even lack of a deeper messaging is exactly what makes regular folks think, what the hell are these people talking about? I had a really great time.
Yeah, who gives a shit about continuity, right? Also, being able to ignore aspects of scientific accuracy or messaging is entirely dependent on whether or not the film is entertaining. Not everybody is going to have enough fun to ignore how the electric state ultimately says nothing about humanity's relationship with technology. Also, judging from the reviews on your Criticless website, it seems like a handful of people didn't like the movie either. So I think your aim might be off on trying to relate to regular folks.
The idea that one can't turn off their brain or shouldn't be expected to while watching something that's totally fantasy has always aggravated me to no end, and it seems to come up a lot with criticisms around this movie and others like it. The fact is, many people can do that and actually greatly enjoy it. It's not their fault that you have a stick up your ass. This comes down to letting go. Just have fun.
Okay, fine. Enjoy your Netflix movie. Turn your brain off. Why does everybody else have to agree with you on this point, though? What reason do they have to agree with you on the mindless entertainment value of the electric state? You haven't made any argument or provided any reasoning why we should agree with your favoring of this film other than
Critics mean, me no like critics.
I'll agree. There's this main plot point that involves a boy's brain, and it's messy. It doesn't really work, but honestly, most normal folks won't think twice about it.
Nothing makes fucking sense. Life makes no sense.
That goes doubly for the socio-political commentary that they lightly touch on, but they don't really direct you to think much about it. It's left to the viewer to think on.
Okay, fine. It leaves something for the viewer to think on. So what did you think about it? Oh, right. Sorry. You turned your brain off for the film, so you probably don't have any thoughts about what the movie is trying to say.
This is the full extent of what most people, especially kids, want. We all know Hollywood can't handle this sort of thing with any level of tact. I know that I'm not going to convert the small pool of general audience complainers or the insufferable critics who likely tanked this simply because they hate Chris Pratt or Millie Bobby Brown. One thing all of these people have in common is that misery loves company. These folks can enjoy their sad little circle jerk while the rest of us are enjoying our simplistic lives.
I'm pretty sure those critics are enjoying other films besides harboring a hate boner for the electric state. I don't even think most critics have thought of the electric state since. How about you? My audience, have you thought about this film much since it came out way back in March?
My kids said to make sure that everyone knows that the two of them give this movie 100% and a 95%. And my 11-year-old specifically said that she would fist fight anyone who gave this less than an 80%. So buckle up. She's going to punch you in the mouth.
Okay, cool. Your kids like the electric state. I don't think I will change my mind on the film being garbage, though, even with your kids threatening me.
Which means that this movie did achieve what it set out to do and be an exciting, fun family film. And it seems to be doing that for a lot of people. So cheers to everyone who enjoyed the electric state, and to everyone who didn't. Freaking lighten up.
Yeah, lighten up, y'all. But also, manufacture weird reasons in your head why you think critics don't like the electric state instead of directly addressing any of their reviews. So, family movies are tricky to review if you cover them for more than whether or not they entertain your kids for a few hours. Now, I can admit when films like Dogman or Stitchhead are not great films, but visually and morally pleasing enough to be suitable for younger audiences. And Roger Ebert was able to do this pretty well.
It's rare for a movie to actually be made for smaller kids, and Curious George does a good job of doing that.
But that doesn't mean I give every family-friendly animated film a pass. The Bad Guys 2, for example, is not a good movie. It shirks many of the heist elements that made the first film so great, and favors more James Bond-style theatrics that are less compelling. And if your kids like that film, that's fine. But I didn't, and I'm not going to lie just because it met a lower bar for entertainment for others. Now, this is all pretty basic stuff I'm talking about, but For someone like Blaine, the idea that somebody else doesn't like the movie his kids adored is hard to understand. If you think all the negative reviews were just from people who hate fun, okay, whatever you need to tell yourself. But if you want others to accept that premise, you've got to make a better case than this. Okay, this looks bad if you're trying to promote a website to encourage movie discussion. But I guess I can't fault the guy for being honest with his opinions about the latest movies. And it's not like he's doing something as embarrassing as making a video complaining about DEI. Here's the video where he complains about DEI.
This is one of these things where you could pull up simple statistics like the population rates within the United States just alone, where it's like 61% white, 18% Hispanic or Latino, 12 Black or African, and 2 or more races is 10%, and it keeps going from there. So the thing is that the United States is majority white, and a lot of these other countries are as well. And if what all of these DEI folks claim, which is that you want to see representation, you want to see people that look like you, that act like you, that sound like you, that is what these DEI folks say, right? If that is the case, then it would make sense why people aren't showing up for these projects that don't represent them and they can't relate to, when the majority of the people in the country are of a certain race.
Yes, he's really doing this. He's really using population statistics to argue against diverse racial representation. He then does the same thing for the queer community.
This also connects to the LGBT stuff, because we are looking at only 7% of Americans that prescribe to this type of sexual identity. And that's the thing. I mean, look at that percentage, 7% out of 100, and yet we are seeing a vast increase in these types of characters in shows, to the point in which I have seen shows like, for example, Sandman, which came on Netflix, where we had entire episodes where every single solitary character was LGBT, and then outside of that, just throughout the entire show, that was the case as well. And we have many shows like this that are out, and it's not to say that that representation can't be there, but also it's 7% of people. And if you are overrepresenting that, by and large, people aren't going to relate to it. They're not going to get it. And they're not going to understand why a very large percentage of characters in these shows represent in that way, in which it does not reflect the real world or the real life at large.
Just say you hate gay characters, dude. This pussyfooting around the issue with stats and claiming that having gay characters doesn't reflect the real world is so fucking embarrassing.
So you've got to either be on one side of this or the other.
We know what side you're on, dude. You're not fooling anybody here with your talk of relating to regular folks.
Because we know that project after project that is DEI focused and centered tend to not do super well. Now, you have your outliers like the Barbie film, but by and large, that is not a super common thing where it wears it on its sleeve to that level and talks about race or gender or sexuality and is just constantly hammering you with it and has an actual mainstream appeal. And I don't think that the thing with Barbie could be carried out in the exact same way and would be the success that it was even back then, just simply due to deceptive marketing practices and things like that, which a lot of people just didn't know what they were getting into, and walking that line in a certain way to where people could interpret it different ways.
Okay, this is now just an argument to be dumb when watching movies and downplaying successful films that didn't star straight white men. This video goes on for 15 minutes, and he doesn't really make a compelling argument against DEI. He doesn't pull up box office numbers or reviews. The only data he pulls up are race and sexuality statistics, which are very concerning that he falls back on this for his argument. Okay, so having watched a handful of Blaine's videos, I've got an idea of how and why Criticless was formed. Blaine fancies himself an average guy, the type of family man who loves watching typical blockbusters with themes that are ephemeral enough that he can ignore them. Based on the language he uses in his videos, he has likely been a viewer of folks like Critical Drinker and Geeks and Gamers. He looked at all their whining about wokeness, Rotten Tomato scores, DEI, and thought to himself, yeah, I could do that. He believed he could capitalize on the hatred of regular folks for wokeness in movies and Rotten Tomato scores. So he assembled his website and created a YouTube page to post his controversial grifter takes to bait individuals to drive traffic and engagement to Criticless. But Blaine, You're bad at this. You don't reference enough in your claims to make them cogent. You don't speak with any level of authority to stress either the anti-woke stances you wish to hold or the snake oil you want to sell as balanced discourse. You also let the quiet part slip out loud too many times when declaring your disgust for heroic brown people committing crimes or stating that the poor need to work harder, which means you've kind of lost your cover for relying on dog whistles to voice disgusting right-wing views. Through your Criticless cast YouTube videos, your pitch to join Criticless is awful. It's terrible because your language and assertions are presented in a manner that only those who have fully bought into the anti-woke mindset would be interested in joining your website. If you're only attracting that type of audience, you're not creating a new avenue for engaging movie discourse. You're making an echo chamber for folks like geeks and gamers, where they can repost their YouTube videos and regurgitate their grifter talking points for those willing to swallow. You somehow made a worse version of the website Worth It or Woke, and at least that website went full cringe by rating its films on a metric of woke to based. Like, that website sucks ass and is little more than a conservative circle jerk, but it's not nearly as bad as believing the crowd you've cultivated can earnestly determine political bias in films. And to the people who really want what Blaine is pitching with Criticless, there are better alternatives. Don't want to rely on Rotten Tomatoes for reviews and want voices from non-professional critics? Go to Letterboxd. Do you need to see if a film is appropriate for your family? Go to Common Sense Media or learn how the MPAA ratings work. Do you still want to voice your opinions on movies but don't want to use Letterboxd or the Rotten Tomatoes audience score? Then start your own blog, either through one of the many free blogging platforms or by building a CMS of your own. It's not as difficult as you think, and you can take pride in knowing you developed writing and web development skills. Due to Criticless's laughable reviews for political bias, association with conservative grifters like geeks and gamers, and poor engagement based on how far the website traffic has tumbled, it's just not a suitable alternative for either Rotten Tomatoes or Letterboxd. And if anything, Criticless is Letterboxd for losers.
It's embarrassing. You feel unclean as you're sitting there. It's junk. First class junk.
Fucking pronouns!
Hey folks, thanks for watching my video on Criticless. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more video essays and movie reviews that I do on this channel. If you'd like to support me, I have a Patreon below which grants you access to early videos and some books that I'm working on. Thanks for watching. Go watch one battle after another. I really like that movie.